Today we're going to be talking about the first steps involved when buying a property in Scotland. And the first thing that we really need to do is understand the Scottish market and how it differs from everywhere else in the UK. And we'll talk about the types of properties available in Scotland. And yeah, I'll give you a brief overview of the 5 key steps that you need to take in order to buy a property. Buying a house in Scotland can be really straightforward, really simple, especially if you're using a mortgage broker. And the key is to try and keep things really simple, because once you start getting complicating things, it can be too much and you end up getting bogged down. So at this stage, my recommendation is to keep it simple, trust your broker, and go through the full process. And this is a process that I take my clients through from step 1 to 5 and guide them through the full process and how to become a homeowner in Scotland. Now, the key difference when you're starting looking in Scotland is to understand how the market works. Now, in Scotland, when you go out and you start putting offers in properties, you've usually got offers over. So if the house is worth 100,000, it might be listed and it might say offers over 95. If that happens, what they're expecting you to do is bid more than 95,000 and potentially bid more than what the property is actually worth. Now, my advice at this stage is to put down an offer that you're comfortable with. And remember, anything that you're buying above the home report value, you need to pay on top of your deposit. Really, really important not to forget that. Now, in the English market and the market throughout other places in the UK, it's not as frequent as the offers over. But what you do have is you've got the gazumping, which doesn't really happen in Scotland. So it's fairly different, the different markets. Now, I'm going to take you through my 5 key things to do when you're looking to buy a property in Scotland. And the 5 key things are really, really simple, straightforward, and they're broken down to help you understand really how the market in Scotland works and take you from point A to point B. And point A is where you are now, and point B is becoming a homeowner. So these 5 key steps, so the first thing that you need to be doing is check how much it's going to cost. Now, I don't mean how much is the property going to cost. I mean, how much are the monthly payments going to be for you each month? How much are you committing to spending? When you're doing your research here, find out how much the mortgage costs. Have a think about the council tax, gas and electric, these payments that you're going to have to pay out every month, and factor these into your monthly affordability. That's step 1, and you should be doing that right at the very start of the process. Then from there, you should be then considering finding out how much you can actually borrow from a lender and getting affordability calculators done. Now, you can pop onto my website. I've got one on there. There's plenty out there on the internet. You can find them on all major search platforms like Rightmove and Zoopla. And these calculators are all right for an indication. Even the one on my website, I wouldn't rely on them. It's good for an indication as to how much you can borrow. But what you need to remember is that's not taking into consideration how your income's distributed, what your outgoings are. So it's key to make sure that you're reviewing how much you can borrow from a bank or from a broker. If you go to the bank, you could be making multiple phone calls to find out that, yeah, you can either borrow what you need or you can't borrow the amount. But when you use a mortgage broker, they can do all of that for you. They do all the research. And, well, I do for my clients anyway at the very start, do all the research to find out how much they can actually borrow based on their income, their outgoings, and their age. Once you've done that, so once you know how much it's going to cost, once you know how much you can borrow, you can then start thinking about getting your mortgage in principle. What this is a pre-approval from a lender that they are willing to give you the money that you need to go and buy the house. Once you've got this, it's not a guarantee that the mortgage is going to go through, but it's a fair chance that the mortgage is going to go through at the back end, because what you've done is you've checked how much you can borrow, you've checked what it's going to cost you, and the lender's told you that based on what you're telling them, a mortgage is going to be approved. And once you're there, once you've got that mortgage in principle, now if you've got everything else in place, it's just about getting out there and finding the right property, finding the right home. And to do that, you're going onto the platforms like your Rightmoves, onto Zoopla, S1 Homes, you're calling estate agents, you're finding out if properties are coming onto the market. And once you've found your right home and you've had your property or your offer accepted, it's then time to apply for the mortgage. Now, once you've done that, you're passing control over to the mortgage broker and they're going to take it forward in the next steps. Now, don't get me wrong, you've got other things to be doing like gathering documents, arranging solicitors and all of these kind of things, but they can all fit into those 5 categories. So to summarise, you've got find out how much you can borrow, find out what it's going to cost you each month, get your mortgage in principle, find your right property, and then apply for the mortgage. And once you've done that, you're passing control over to the mortgage broker. But if you follow those 5 steps, it's going to keep it really simple, really straightforward for you when you're buying your first house in Scotland.